The global head of marketing at Spotify is about to answer your biggest questions, like how do I get more streams, trigger the algorithm, do monthly listeners even matter, and should artists worry about AI? So my man Kato on the Track did an interview with Sam, who's the head of marketing at Spotify, and these are some of my biggest takeaways. My name's Chris, also known as the Artist Manifest. I'm a full-time rock and hip-hop artist. I have about 500,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. We just got a song in the Super Bowl and the Olympics last year, and I love coaching other artists, so let's jump into this. The first question, does Spotify really make it a level playing field for both signed and indie artists?
Fans don't care how you're releasing your music, they just love your music.
Right.
And yeah, streaming like democratizes the playing field like that. Like everyone gets to deliver their music the same.
Yeah.
The majority of artists who are playlisted on Spotify are indie. You know, half the royalties on Spotify are going to indies. And so like, you know, great opportunity for people to go the label path, tons of opportunity for people to go indies. And yeah, it's all about that level playing field.
Did you hear that? Half of the royalties that Spotify pays out every year goes to independent artists like you and me. Now, in 2014, Spotify paid out $1 billion, and in 2024, it's now up to $10 billion. But the next question is, do editorial playlists still matter? I still get added to them right now, but is it still a game changer like it used to be?
I think so. I think just kind of the role of playlisting has evolved and expanded in different ways. It's a little bit less just hit driven from the biggest flagship playlists.
Right.
Like, I think like placement on New Music Friday, today's top hits, Rap Caviar, that still can change your career. But I think the focus in a good way has become less just about those big flagship playlists and more about the whole ecosystem, like hundreds, thousands of playlists where, you know, our Fresh Finds playlist where it's all unsigned artists and all by genre, all different countries. I love Pop Rising. I love Lorem. That's a genreless playlist. So it's kind of this whole web of playlisting where, you know, way more artists get programming exposure because there's so many more opportunities. Like the big flagships are nice, but for a lot of artists who are getting like, you know, sustainable revenue on Spotify, it's coming from this broad network of playlisting and programming. And part of that's editorial.
So I just looked at my data for the last 28 days where we got about 50,000 plus streams from editorial playlists and got almost 500,000 streams from algorithmic playlists. So you always want to pitch to the editorial playlist, but not rely on it. But you want that to feed Spotify more data so you can trigger the algorithmic playlists. But Spotify's team also helps to program those. So you want to hear this.
And so they're programming those playlists. When we think about like programming on Spotify, a ton of it's the new personalized experiences too, like our AI DJ where, you know, in between a few songs, the DJ interrupts and kind of tells you a bit more about the artist and the backstory. Daylist, if you've used Daylist, where like every 4 or 5 hours, you get a brand new daylist based on what you'd like to listen to in that moment, on that day of the week. And, you know, mixes, radio, Discover Weekly, Release Radar. The whole set of programming is what I think artists are thinking about more and more, where it's not just about if I get on New Music Friday, my career is made. If I don't, I'm crushed.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more like, all right, I'm doing really well on radio. DJs introducing me to new artists. Here's the success I got on Release Radar. My followers are getting that every time. I got on a bunch of these Fresh Finds playlists. I got on Pop Rising, and as songs bubble up, you get on bigger and bigger playlists, which is, you know, even better. Yeah. But I think that's how it's changed. Like, I think now there's other places where you have these like, you know, flash in the pan successes where a song can just go from like 0 to crazy, and it's not really that sustainable. And I think Spotify playlists used to be a bit like that. Like if you got on one of the big 5, great, and people weren't thinking about the rest.
Yeah.
And now it's really about that kind of like bigger picture of the whole ecosystem.
Right.
Which I think is ultimately a good thing.
So I think that's really wise to look at Spotify as a whole ecosystem, because I just looked at my data for algorithmic playlists and we're played on about 19 algorithmic playlists. For Spotify editorial playlists, I'm on about 20. But check this out. For playlists made by Spotify listeners, I'm on 155 1,000 of them. And so it's really about activating your fans, because when you activate your fans, which you're going to hear from Spotify, and you drive those streams, that's how you activate some of the algorithmic playlists. But here's what Sam has to say on new artists, on how they can get found and discovered.
Believe me, I wish every song could get playlisted.
Yeah.
I mean, there's the easy stuff we always say that sometimes frustrates folks because they know they've like pitched through Spotify for Artists a bunch, and it doesn't always work out because there's so many people pitching and only so many playlists. I'd say, yeah, always pitch through Spotify for Artists at least 7 days before release. Do your best to fill in that, short blurb where you can give a bit more background about the song, the creative process, the promotional.
So you guys actually use that data?
Oh, yeah.
We're not just like...
Yeah, I sit with editors all the time. Like, they live in that data. Every time they read that pitch before they listen to any song in their kind of playlist review tool, before they listen, they're reading it. It's like right there.
Wow.
Selena, our head of editorial, who you met earlier today, she listens to 3 hours of music every day, no matter what, no matter how many meetings she has, everything else. Her whole team's like that. They're truly reading every pitch.
So what they're referring to as far as the pitch is in your artist.spotify.com dashboard. And again, what I love about Spotify is it shows you how many people are listening to your music right now. But if you click on music, and once you've scheduled your song, you click on upcoming. And then if you scroll down, you can see your song. And if I click on these 3 dots here, normally it says allows me to pitch the song, but I've already done my pitch. But if I click view pitch, this is all the data and everything they're asking for, the genre, the song styles, but the description is what he's talking about. One of the ones I did just for fun was, hey Spotify squad, my new single Supernatural is the kind of rock-infused alt-pop anthem that belongs blasting through your speakers. I won't bore you with the rest of it, but I did mention I'd love to see this on your editorial playlist, like Rock This, the new alt pop rock shot would make the perfect headquarters for this new heroic song. I'll promote the absolute junk out of this track. Think TikTok, IG, Facebook, and more. But again, never leave this blank. You always want to pitch. I try to make them laugh. Let's keep going.
We've had this idea that on the Spotify for Artists social handles, we should do like a live stream on Instagram one day where we just like show the editors at work.
Right.
They're in our playlisting tool all day. They're reading exactly what artists and their teams are writing in their pitch. They're playing the music. They're sending it around to each other. They're considering it for different playlists that they manage, looking at the data. So that's the big thing. The other thing I'd say is like, just playlisting isn't everything. And I think a lot of artists have started to realize that, where sometimes it can feel like if you aren't playlisted, that's it. There's like, the majority of streams on Spotify are what we call active streams.
Sure.
Like for people who use Spotify for Artists, as an artist, this metric because we break down streams from programming, from when listeners are asking for Spotify to recommend music or a third-party playlist curator to recommend music. So like that's all your streams from playlists, radio, mixes, third-party playlists, whatever. Active streams are when listeners are actually seeking you out. They're listening to, from your artist profile, from your album page, from their own liked songs, their own playlist. The majority of streams on Spotify, out of the trillions of streams a year, are active streams. It's fans choosing what to listen to.
Right.
Programming's really important for discovery.
Right.
And programming's important. Part of that's editorial. A lot of that's personalized as well. The majority is active streams. And, the best way to, build that fan base. And a lot of our algorithm, a lot of our editors are data focused. And so I know you give tips to artists all the time about how to promote their work.
Yeah.
All the time, indie artists get that initial momentum themselves, starts to show up in the data, starts to get picked up in the algorithm. And then that's when, playlist editors might notice a brand new artist who hasn't had a hit before, doesn't have a lot of streams before. So I think it really starts with that artist driving those active streams, getting those first listeners yourself.
Right.
I think that's what's great about, I think that's like natural to artists. Artists want to take control of their careers.
Right.
And I think the ones who are succeeding the most aren't just kind of like waiting to see if playlist editors from any streaming service are going to pick them up, and more, they're hustling, they're promoting, they're getting those listeners. And then that's when, Spotify programming on another streaming service can take you to the next level.
So he just confirmed what I said earlier, is that the majority of streams are active streams. So fans are actually seeking you out. They're seeking out your profile, trying to find the song or searching for it and pulling up the song and hitting play. But then the other streams that are more passive are those that are programmed from maybe the algorithm, from the radio playlist, or just getting on a editorial playlist where people are just happening to be listening, and then your song plays. Like, that's a very different, that's such a more passive listen. And so what he's saying is you want those active listeners, those that are seeking you out. And what's so rad about promoting your music, and one way we do that a lot, is through meta ads. So I take my best social media posts, Instagram, Facebook posts, and we run ads. And when fans see those, they not only just go and click and listen to it, but then maybe they'll go on another platform and they'll listen to it, or they'll just dive deeper and check out your stuff. And he's saying that artists that are hustling, posting, promoting, running meta ads like I'm talking about, those are the ones that are getting the attention of artists. They're not waiting around just hoping in the studio, just throwing it on the internet. No, they're hustling. And so I want to encourage you, maybe you've been pushing for a long time. It's not time to quit on your dream, but maybe it's time to quit on your strategy. If you haven't downloaded my book, Spotify Profits 2.0, I'll put the link below. But now on to the most controversial question of the interview. Why did Spotify stop paying artists with less than 1,000 streams for each song?
When Spotify set up its royalty system, 15 years ago or whenever Spotify was founded, there was a pretty limited number of songs available. There weren't a bunch of distributors delivering tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of songs a day onto streaming services, little inefficiencies, like little kind of parts of the royalty pool. When we were paying like $1 billion a year in royalties in 2014, we're paying out $10 billion now.
Right.
So things that only impact like under 1% of streams didn't really used to add up. And once you're paying out $10 billion a year, they really do. And you've seen this explosion of so much put onto streaming services. Also, we were trying to get ahead of like explosion of AI tracks, right? Where with AI, someone might just, without even thinking about it, distribute tons of music to a service like Spotify. The policies really, Spotify makes no money from the policy. It's all about redistributing money within the royalty pool.
Okay.
So the way it works is each song needs to get 1,000 annual streams to participate in the royalty pool. Mm-hmm. As you said, there's like hundreds of millions of songs on Spotify now.
Yeah.
0.5% of streams are of songs with under 1,000 streams. Mm-hmm. So 10 years ago, 2014, 0.5% of songs of, that's 0.5% of a billion. It's like, small enough. It probably isn't making that material an impact.
Yeah.
Now that's tens of millions of dollars a year. And the problem is those tens of millions of dollars would be getting split up in 2-cent monthly payments. Mm-hmm. That's what a song with under 1,000 annual streams generally kind of would earn on average.
Right.
Artists, it doesn't even pass the minimums for most distributors to collect the money. And it also creates a bunch of kind of schemes that we want to avoid, right? Someone uploading 10,000 songs, hoping they can get a few streams on each of them, a few pennies on each, and it adds up. Spam tactics like that.
Yeah.
So what we did was say, all right, for those tens of millions of dollars a year, especially getting ahead of the explosion of new music coming, should we split that up in 2-cent monthly payments to tens of millions of songs, or should we use that to increase the payments to the other 99.5% of streams? So all the numbers you see on Loud and Clear, artists making 1,000 a year, 10,000 a year, $1 million a year, they're all higher because of this policy. Everyone's payments went up. And so, level playing field, all songs subject to the same policy. And it means once you kind of reach that level, which tens of millions of songs reach that level, 600 million users on Spotify, trillions of streams, getting over 1,000 streams as an initial barrier isn't a high bar. Mm-hmm. And we're able to increase the payments for everyone else, protect the platform from spam, make sure the money is actually reaching artists. And that's how we've been thinking about it. But believe me, like the reason I work at Spotify, everyone I know works at Spotify, it's like help artists get paid. That's what we're trying to do.
I think it's great that they have this milestone of 1,000 streams per song, and so that it increases the royalty pool for everybody. Obviously, 99% of my songs all get more than 1,000 streams per year, and I know you can do it too. That is such a small milestone, especially compared to YouTube, where you need 1,000 subscribers just to monetize your channel. That is way harder, and if this decreases the spam and the bots and all the shady stuff, I'm for it. Which leads to the next question. Do monthly listeners even matter? This is crazy what he says.
Monthly listeners, just one number. It's not the be all end all.
But that's the number that people like to go to because it's like most, it's right under the artist name. You see it on their Spotify profile, and it can be, like surprising.
I know the pressure of the monthly listener count.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely hear that from artists all the time. Monthly listener count just means how many listeners in all of Spotify in the last 28 days listen to one of your songs at least once. So like from a playlist and they never listen to you again, a playlist and they listen to you a bunch, your biggest fan who listens to you 100 times in that month, it all counts as one.
Got it.
Right? So it's kind of just a measure of reach.
Right.
If you kind of have really broad reach, you have a lot of people who listen to you at least once, great. And obviously some of the biggest artists in the world with the most passionate fan bases have huge monthly listener counts. That's based on like a real engaged fan base. The truth is like not every monthly listener count's created the same.
Right.
What you want as an artist is those super listeners, those active listeners who are listening to you a ton. And in Spotify for Artists, that's the sort of data we give to, give artists the real sort of feedback loop they should want from their data. Not just how many people might be listening to me once, but how many people are listening to me actively, choosing to hear me. What are my streams per listener? You can see streams per listener by song or for your whole catalog. And then you can even see your super listeners, which is how many listeners do you have who are listening to you a ton every month. And so I think the artists who are doing it best are focused on metrics like that. Are you developing fans? Do you have people who want to go see you live? Do you have people who are going to be like first in line to listen to your next album when it comes out? And monthly listener doesn't capture that.
So the question is, how do we develop our fan base and have those hardcore super fans? Well, one thing you want to do is optimize your Spotify profile so they can go deeper with you. One of those is make sure you integrate your Shopify merch store with Spotify, okay? Shopify.com. Connect your account. They've integrated. You can set up a print-on-demand service like Printful or Printify, so you can do print-on-demand merch so fans can buy stuff from you if you want to go deeper. The next thing is make sure your banner is updated. You get a great picture of you, your profile picture, and then when you scroll down on someone's page on Spotify, you have all those photos. Make sure you got a bunch of photos, right? And then the next thing you want to make sure is you've connected your social media, so you can link to Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, whatever it is, right? Because if I'm a fan of your music, like I want to check out your stuff. But then when I go to your social media, is it a ghost town? Or is there stuff that I can connect with you and bond on with you more and just go deeper in the relationship, right? This is how super fans are developed. The last thing is Spotify canvases. So when people are listening to your music on a phone, one of the biggest things you can do is have that 3 to 8 second video on your song. So again, people are connecting more with your music. So before you do any marketing or promotion, you want to make sure you optimize these things, which leads me to the next thing. What about botted and fake streams? What does Spotify say about that?
Yeah, artificial streaming, as we call it, is like a big focus for our team. And it comes back to what we were talking about earlier about the way the royalty pool works, where, 2/3 of all music revenue from streaming services goes back to rights holders. And if we pay out money for any fake streams, that's money that would have gone to a legit artist who's like building an actual fan base who we want to reward. So that's why we take it so seriously, because any money that goes to people who are buying streams, illegally, that's money that should be going to artists who are, doing it the right way. So we've built out a massive team that's looking around every corner, catching all the different tactics of artificial streaming people use. And there's all different types. There's artists who know that they're buying a shady service because they want the numbers to look higher and, they incorrectly think it's going to help them there. There's some who think they're paying for something legit because a lot of these services like don't market themselves. Honestly, they'll act like it's a legit promo service, but actually it's, botted streams. And I hate when artists fall prey to that. And then there's folks, trying to do shady stuff, right? Like release music and get royalties from it. We're catching tons of artificial streams every month. It's through all the obvious ways and all the new ways people try to find. Our team finds it.
Yeah.
Every time we kind of detect an artificial stream, we're not paying out royalties for it. We're removing it from public metrics, so monthly listener count, all-time track stream count. It's not counting towards charts. And then as it starts to be more serious artificial streaming, that's when you might lose playlisting. You might get a penalty through your distributor. Some of the more kind of serious deterrents that we have to do to show how seriously we're taking it and protecting the royalty pool for artists doing it the right way. I think we've improved our tech a lot the last few years. So, maybe there used to be times where things would stay in public metrics. It really doesn't anymore. We're catching tons of artificial streams and removing them.
Another reason you don't want botted or fake streams is because it messes up with the data. Spotify's trying to find real listening behavior of people actually adding it, saving it. But when you're getting these fake streams, it's skewing the numbers. So Spotify doesn't even know who to share your song with. Plus, I've had so many artists get songs completely deleted. Thank God, if you have, you can actually re-upload them, or at least we have been able to with the cases of the artists that I've worked with, but you want to stay away from that stuff. And you don't want to just be added to any Spotify playlist, right? If you're a rock artist, you want to be added to rock playlists. If you're a country artist, you want to be added to country playlists. So if your hand's been slapped, look at it as just a little speeding ticket. Don't get discouraged. Keep moving. Maybe someone did you wrong. Well, there's a lot of good people out there. You can always run meta ads in second tier, third tier countries like they're talking about, whether that's a Brazil, Indonesia, Philippines, right? Somewhere where we can get those link clicks really, really cheap and get fans listening to your music. And it actually triggers the algorithm in the United States. So you don't have to be just running ads in the US, Canada, UK, where it's a bit more expensive. You can actually use the second and third tier countries to do that. If you want more help with that, make sure you come to our Spotify 5-day challenge or pick up my new book, Playlist Profits. Let's keep going, because now he's going to talk about AI and what they're doing to figure that whole new technology out when it comes to creators making music with it.
Right now, we're seeing very, very, very little streaming of fully AI generated songs. Mm-hmm. For me, what I'm most excited about is AI as a tool for artists.
Yeah.
Right? Lots of producers are using AI tools in cool ways where they're in control.
Yep.
It can bring the cost down. They can do new things creatively that they couldn't do before.
Yeah.
I love that, right? If it enables new types of music, new sounds we haven't heard before, that all sounds great.
Yeah.
Where, I don't want AI to head is replacing artists, replacing producers. And that's how we're thinking about the breakdown. We want to, support artists using AI, producers using AI, if they want to, when they're in control.
Right.
They deliver us the final product. We never want AI that's feeling like it's, replacing or removing the artist at the center of it.
Yeah.
And so the big areas we're focused on are AI deception and then AI spam. So with deception, it's a zero tolerance policy. Mm-hmm. You can't use, voice clones and deep fakes unauthorized, pretend you're, train it on an artist's voice, release the music, pretending it's them.
Right. We saw that with the whole Drake and Weeknd thing.
Yeah. There's no place for unauthorized voice clones on Spotify. We have a deceptive content policy. It's flagged for us, it's taken down.
So it's good to know Spotify's got our back as far as artists and producers versus the AI taking us over and replacing us as the creators, right? But how can we use this technology to make better songs, better productions, and just market our music and use it for even business plans or writing song titles, emails, right? Because I believe artists that don't utilize AI are going to be left behind. Because if you look at the different ages of time and history, we had the agricultural age where we transitioned from hunting and gathering to farming. And then you had the industrial age, which began with the, industrial revolution, right? Marked with mass production. And those that didn't develop that and embrace that got left behind. And then of course there's the information age with computers and the internet. And for me as a kid growing up, I just grew up around computers, so I just embraced it, versus a lot of friends, they weren't around it as much because like I had a friend or kind of a father figure that taught me, and so I embraced it, and so I was able to benefit from that now. And so I believe those artists that embrace this technology now are going to benefit and profit in the long term. But the next thing that he covers, and this is the last thing, which is super beneficial, is like publishing, master royalties, and this whole fiasco around Snoop Dogg talking about taking his music down from Spotify because he didn't get paid as much as he thought from this specific song. You're going to be shocked at what you find out here.
I love Snoop. I want him to get all the money, as much money as he wants. He deserves in my book. Yeah, that's an interesting one because it shows how complicated music can be. If you have 1 billion streams on Spotify, we're going to pay out $3 to $5 million for it.
Right.
The range is because it depends what countries the streams are in, and premium listeners, so on. 3 to 5 million. That's well documented. Have you worked on any billion stream songs?
I'm getting there.
Good.
I'm getting there.
Well, I'll circle back when you do. Yeah, the overall payout, it's like 3 to 5 million for 1 billion streams. 80% or so goes to the recording side, 20% or so goes to the publishing side.
So when you look at the master and the publishing side, the master side is normally the sound recording, like who paid for the record, who paid for the producer, the engineer, the studio time, right? You're probably the master owner if you paid for it. If you did a collab, like a 50-50 deal with a producer where you didn't pay anything, then maybe you split that master 50-50. If it's a label deal, then they probably own the master and you're maybe getting 15 to 20% of it. And then, of course, you have the publishing side, which is the songwriters who wrote the song. And that's a much smaller royalty than the master side. Let's keep going.
You probably know the wild world of publishing better than I do, but there's mechanical, there's performance. For that song, I think it was Young, Wild, and Free by Snoop, released with Atlantic, so major label. I don't know Snoop's terms on the recording, but 80% of the 3 to 5 million goes to the recording side. Wiz Khalifa, Bruno Mars were on the track too. So was there an advance someone's recouping? What are the splits there? I couldn't tell you. On the publishing side, that's around 20% of that payout, and on that song there's 13 songwriters. Ooh. And so I don't know if there's samples, I don't know what else, but there's 13 writers on that song.
Okay, so now the picture's getting clear. There's the master royalty, which is the main part, and then he just said publishing is about 20%. Okay, so the publishing. So that publishing, that 20%, which is already small, is chopped up for 13 songwriters. If you divided that up evenly, that's about 7.6% of the publishing each, if they split it up all fairly, right? I'm sure Snoop and, Wiz Khalifa and Bruno Mars got the most of it, and who knows how much the label got if there's publishing deals in there. So there's so many ways this pie is getting cut up. But you also got to look at the master side. That is the biggest royalty. But if Atlantic is involved, you know they're taking 80% of that. And then who is really the signed artist, right? Who was the one who really put it out? Was it Snoop, Bruno? Was it Wiz Khalifa? Because maybe some of those people just got bought out and paid to feature on the song. We don't know the terms. All I know is when you have this many people chopping up the pie, of course your royalty rate is going to go down.
And so when I was doing some in the back of the napkin, I think maybe Snoop was talking about just the mechanical royalties that he might have gotten from that one song. So yeah, basically, it's a good example of if you're DIY artist, things are pretty simple. If you own 100% of your music and you write and produce it yourself.
Right.
If you have there are billion stream songs that are fully independent, that person's getting the full 3 to 5 million. Once you're signing label deals, sometimes it's great terms, right? Maybe you get a life-changing advance and that's awesome, but you're just not going to earn as much back
in royalties.
And so that's where Snoop knows his own terms. He owns his own record label now, so I hope he's making even more. I want Snoop getting all the money he wants. But yeah, that's what happens. That's $3 to $5 million for 1 billion streams. And from there, it's how many writers you have, what's your label deal, all those things. And
the pie gets split up.
Yeah, it's a good example of how confusing the music industry is, because we do this loud and clear report where we're here's all the data we have on our side. No other streaming service is publishing any data. We, have no idea how many artists are generating different amounts on any other streaming service. And then from the label and distributor side, a lot of the deal terms are opaque. Folks don't know how much money's making it to the artist and songwriter. And people ask us sometimes, they'll be okay, so how much is this person making? It's we don't know. We know how much they pay out.
Right.
If they're on a DIY distributor, we can probably guess they're keeping 100% of it.
Yeah.
But that's where I hope the industry gets even more transparency.
Yeah.
Because that's when artists feel empowered to understand, here's the revenue opportunity on each service. Here's what each deal means. If I go major, it means this. If I go indie, it means this. If I do it myself, it means that. Like, I have to be this popular to earn these amounts. That's what we want. That's why we've been doing 5 loud and clear reports every year.
Yeah.
So I hope we just start to see like the whole industry start to do stuff like that.
So big shout outs to Cato and Sam for doing that interview. There's just so many gold nuggets in there, and I hope you see the opportunity that is Spotify. A lot of artists always glorifying the past and hating on Spotify, but I lived there. I was in the past, 20 years ago, releasing CDs, trying to get signed, get my CDs in the store, and the past was not that great because I was there. It is way better now with Spotify leading the charge on this streaming. And, you got distributors like DistroKid, TuneCore, CD Baby, Symphonic, Stem. There's tons of distributors. I personally use DistroKid. Don't get hung up on which distributor to use because it really matters how you're marketing your music, how you're getting it out there. And that's where, my team and what we do is we help. The first thing is my book, Spotify Profits 2.0, which teaches you the waterfall strategy to release singles leading up to a digital album. If you want to release CDs and merch, that's fine as well. That just adds other different income streams. But the real thing is getting known, okay? Artists can't stream you unless they know you. My man Cardone says they can't flow you unless they know you. They can't buy their merch, right? And so our problem is getting known, getting out there. The one stat they didn't mention was that, 80% or 90% of artists on Spotify have less than 1,000 monthly listeners, right? Or less than 1,000 streams. What is this? 0.5%, have less than 1,000 streams per song. And so you can easily change that. How? By getting serious about your marketing and putting it out there. And it doesn't mean you have to be salesy or sleazy. It means you starting to tell the stories behind each one of these songs. Every one of your songs has a story, or you wouldn't have written it. And instead of saying my song is out now, you say, hey, I went through this dark time in my life and this is what inspired this song. I broke up with this person, or this thing happened in my life, or I went to a concert and made me want to write this party rockin' song, right? Like, you want to tell the stories behind the songs. Stories sell, facts tell. And if we want to sell more, we've got to do more storytelling. And the last thing I'll say is that just because it's free doesn't mean you don't still have to sell it. That was a mind game changing because look, Spotify has made it free, right? The music is free, but you still have to now promote it. But it's a lot easier to promote free, like saying, hey, my song is free, just go stream it, versus pull out your wallet and go buy it, right? And so these are all the different strategies we teach on how to market, how to, like, what you do pre-launch, what you do day of, what do you do the 7, 30, 40, 60 days after, and even like in our song launch checklist is how do you breathe life into an old song? Because so many times, we put the song out there and we didn't do what Sam said was like really hustling the streams. We just kind of like left it out there. Well, you can crank up ads. You can crank up a new campaign and breathe new life and give Spotify that data, and then their algorithm grabs it. So you're never too late, my friend. Keep going.